Hello, everyone. My name is Rochelle-Lawton, and I'm a public artist, designer, and street art instructor from San Francisco. And my work centers around community and public space. Kicking off today's talk, I begin with this piece titled Seismic. I created this piece for San Francisco General Hospital's Hearts and SF project. I begin with this piece because today's talk is really a love letter to San Francisco and the creative communities that make this place so special. Now, this heart represents San Francisco neighborhoods throughout time and creative communities' ability to rebuild throughout constantly shifting environments. Whether post-1906 earthquake, throughout waves of change in the tech boom, or post-pandemic, San Francisco artists consistently shape what this city becomes. And today, I hope their stories and ways of working inspire you. Now, my understanding of art and community-centered design didn't start where you might expect. I graduated from UC Berkeley with a certificate in design and a BFA, and very soon after, I ran off to join the circus. Now, this may seem like a dramatic pivot, but at the time, this experience and everything that followed reshaped the way I think about design. Now, today I'm going to be sharing some stories from my work in street art and public art, and how this has shown me how we can create more meaningful, connected work. Because street art isn't just a medium. It's a way of working, a way of responding, and a way of connecting people. So I wasn't joking about running off and joining the circus. After graduating, I freelanced as a project manager for creative companies and nonprofits. This path led me to Prescott Circus Theater, a 40-year-old West Oakland nonprofit that brings circus arts education into Oakland Unified Schools. I had barely even been to a circus before, and suddenly I was immersed in it. I found myself surrounded by clowns, jugglers, and fire dancers. I was stilt walking at staff meetings, learning to balance in a completely new way, and delivering unicycles across the East Bay to partner school sites. The experience was chaotic and a little surreal, but what grounded it all was the mission. Prescott Circus Theater leads with care, centering youth to build confidence, perseverance, teamwork, artistic skill, and belonging. Through this work, I became part of a much larger community. I got to see students across school sites, I saw performances come together, and I was introduced to the deep network of alumni and families connected to the organization. Now, all of this changed how I thought about creative work. It was no longer just about producing. It was about contributing to something that already exists within a community. When I saw this call for art for a billboard in downtown Oakland, I was ready to create. I thought of this illustration as a collection of real moments, from Oakland First Friday vendors to Chinatown merchants to students standing tall on their stilts, seeing the world from another perspective. Shortly after the billboard was installed, something unexpected happened. Our students were participating in a parade. We turned a corner, and there it was, the billboard. The energy of our students were there, the energy of the parade, and the work reflected it all right back to us. Now, this became a moment where my art and my life met in real time, and it stayed with me, because it showed me that when art lives in public space, it becomes a part of people's lives, not separate from it. I had a very similar experience almost exactly a year ago right here at Config. I came in excited and curious, and I spent the day collecting swag and going to talks. But by the end of that first day, I realized something. I hadn't actually connected with that many people. I had come here to network, but I was finding it difficult to start conversations. So many people here were coming with teams or were reconnecting with past colleagues, and I wasn't quite sure where I fit within that. After all, I was spending my mornings stringing together clown noses and my afternoons teaching spray paint and street art. By the end of that first day, I was feeling really out of place, so I decided to call it. I had to catch my bus on Market Street, and I cut through Yerba Buena Gardens. And I immediately stopped in my tracks. That's my art, large scale and installed. Now, thank you. And then as I stood there, I was just as excited. And I started taking photos, and it was so interesting and really cool to see my work at that scale. I had been in conversation with your Buena, knew the piece was accepted, but I didn't know it was up, so it was a big surprise. And I immediately started taking photos. And as I did, something shifted. I thought to myself, this is my home, my backyard, and these are the people and places that shaped me. For a moment, I had forgotten that. And this became one of many times in my life where art restored my confidence, grounding me in a moment of disconnect. The next day, I came back to Config with this newfound confidence, and I began to share more openly about my work across public art, education, project management, and design. And suddenly, conversations opened up, because so many people here are also artists. I met musicians, ceramicists, painters, and even taggers. And that changed how I thought about spaces like this. Those conversations didn't just stay at what do you do? They moved into deeper questions like how do you approach your work, who are you designing for, and what type of impact are you trying to have? And I kept coming back to street art, not just as something I teach, but as a way of thinking about design in relationship to community and public space. That's something I get to explore more deeply through my work with First Amendment. First Amendment, also known as 1AM, is where I get to teach street art workshops to corporate teams and local schools. I also work with a team to bring murals into the city. And I also get to work with community partners to find walls and connect them with artists and bring these projects into public space. In my workshops, I teach about spray paint and street art history, talking about some of the more internationally acclaimed street artists, to those less visible but just as important. We talk about how artists work in public space, whether through bold murals or through subtle interventions and layered work that reveals itself over time. The most interesting part of these workshops is the range of participants. Guests range from corporate teams used to highly structured systems to local students holding a spray cam for the first time. Regardless of this difference, there's a shared moment early on, a moment of hesitation, because designing with public space in mind feels different. There's a different relationship to permanence, as you can't undo something as easily, and you can't fully predict how something will be experienced. Now that changes how we approach making. After that initial hesitation, I typically see two directions. People will either embrace that imperfection, and they'll start getting large scale and really messy on these walls, or they'll become highly intentional, and suddenly new questions emerge. People start to ask, where does this live, and how does this interact with what else is on this wall? The work for a lot of my tech teams is no longer about platforms, pixels, or print. It becomes about people, place, and presence. On the street, you might find photography, illustration, type, and collage all layered together like a living design system. Color palettes are coming from the neighborhood, scale from the buildings, and the work exists in conversation with the world around it. An example of this, before working with 1AM, I worked with the arts education nonprofit Scrap. I was placed to teach in a third grade classroom across the street from this mural. And I remember one day very clearly. My students came in, they were super excited, and they were really counting down the minutes for this field trip they were having at the park the next day. And I remember thinking to myself, this isn't the park I remember as a kid. When people think about the Tenderloin neighborhood of San Francisco, a very specific narrative comes up, one of fentanyl, overdose, and crime. But for many San Franciscans, that's not the full story. The Tenderloin is home, it's where third graders make art, and it's where people come together to support one another. This mural exists within that reality. It doesn't erase those challenges, but it adds something else. It speaks to community needs. In this case, the need for affordable housing. For my students, that park isn't just a location, it's joy. And having a mural there matters because it reflects a different narrative, one that says, this space belongs to us. Now at the same time, other design exists in the Tenderloin, one's less welcoming. Hostile architecture can be found all over the Tenderloin neighborhood, uncomfortable benches and surfaces that prevent resting, ultimately to deter unhoused people. As designers, we have to acknowledge that our work can include or exclude, create belonging, or remove it. One artist who's done an incredible job of building belonging in the Bay is Agana. And her work is strengthening communities across San Francisco and Oakland, and I've encountered it in a very specific way. On long days of dropping off stilts and unicycles, I would run into her pieces in partner schoolyards. Now, those moments always stood out to me. They reminded me of what was possible in these spaces after exhausting long days working in education. And if that's the effect it had on me as an adult simply passing through that space, I can only imagine what that meant for students who are growing up alongside these works and who may see these and see themselves as artists because they see that possibility reflected around them. Agana also once taught within Oakland schools, and she represents the dedication of our public arts educators. Her work shows what it looks like to stay connected to community and environments that people move through every day. Street art is also highly conversational. Take this example of local characters, Ricky, Rat, and Honey Bear. What may seem playful on the surface is actually a conversation rooted in cultural erasure and gentrification in San Francisco. Artists, street artists specifically, they respond to each other, build on each other's work, and they challenge each other, collaging a larger conversation. Street art isn't about this finished, untouchable piece, it's about that ongoing, never-ending exchange. In design spaces, we don't always challenge each other in the same way. Street art reminds us to be bold, to respond, and to adapt in real time. Take street artist Vogue and Twin Walls. During a time when cultural erasure feels so prevalent, these artists respond quickly. Twin Walls' team and Vogue put this piece up in Chinatown just a couple of weeks ago. I ran into Vogue, and we had the pleasure of chatting about this work. This piece celebrates Wong Kim Ark, whose battle against prejudice during the Chinese Exclusion Act led to the establishment of birthright citizenship in the US. During a time when this is being challenged, when people are being taken away from their homes, these street artists ensure that cultural history is not erased, and they remind us that we all belong. The only way that this history gets glossed over, according to these artists, is with a fresh coat of protective paint. Now, on the theme of standing up and leaving your mark, street artists are some of the most resilient people climbing to extreme heights. And as they rise, so do their neighborhoods. Take Camera One of Visitation Valley, a neighborhood often overlooked by the city. He stays true to his community through public murals, using his signature butterfly motif. He states that caterpillars endure pain as they transform into something new, and references another San Francisco great, Dr. Maya Angelou. We delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes it has gone through to achieve that beauty. His work captures resilience and adaptability through creativity, qualities that I believe make San Francisco so special. Another lesson from street art is the idea of checking back in. Take internationally acclaimed Brazilian duo, Os Gêmeos. They came to San Francisco in 2003 and created this work and came back years later to revamp, not just to update it, but to honor artists in the community who had passed. This idea of maintaining a relationship with your work and the space it exists in and the community it exists in is central to mural practice. In design contexts, oftentimes projects are completed and handed off. We usually have a clear endpoint. In street art, the work always continues. Artists come back to clean, restore, and revamp their work. What could it look like to revisit our work more often and to see how it functions and adjust it over time? Now, there's research that supports the community impact that we're seeing in street art. The Porchlight Mural Program, evaluated by Yale School of Medicine, shows that street art isn't just aesthetic. The study explored how public art impacts well-being, and it aimed to improve neighborhood conditions while supporting individuals facing behavioral health challenges. The study compared neighborhoods within the collaborative mural making program and then neighborhoods outside of the program. And it found increases in social cohesion, sense of agency, overall neighborhood conditions and aesthetics, and feelings of safety. At the same time, it showed a decrease in mental health stigma. In response to the study, one participant shared, "I'm comfortable here. I was thinking, can I still paint?" And I thought, yes, it's a blessing. I want to continue now long term. I'm looking for an outlet to take my mind away from the streets, to give myself something different. I found that here, creativity is that outlet. Now, what's important here is that community members were involved in the mural making, and they found themselves re-inspired through this process. This shows us that it's not just about having pretty murals. It's about how people gain confidence and agency by shaping the world around them. I want to close this section by sharing something more personal. I grew up in San Francisco, and by the age of 13, I had moved over 8 different times, oftentimes living with lots of roommates and being put up by family friends. Money was tight growing up, and this led to some pretty untraditional spaces. And at one point, I found myself living in a Bayview warehouse, technically a marijuana grow house. Now, at the time, this part of the Bayview was extremely bare, and as a kid without wheels, I had to find ways to entertain myself. So I'd walk around abandoned Victorian buildings, and I'd peek my head through broken glass and marvel at these expansive Victorian architectural interiors. I would sit by the water of India Basin, and I would spend hours and hours drawing. In the evenings, I would look out my window to a direct view of this mural Bayview rise. Now, at the time, I didn't understand its significance, that the Bayview is a Superfund site, an area deemed toxic by the US government, and that this piece was an ode to environmentalist efforts in the neighborhood. All I understood was that it was bold and colorful in an otherwise kind of empty time and place. What mattered was that this piece gave me something to connect to. It showed me what my own drawings could one day become, and it gave me a sense of possibility. Now, that's exactly what public art can do. It can exist in a space and slowly change how an individual feels within it. So when I think back to everything that street art has taught me, it comes down to this. Design doesn't exist in isolation. It exists in public space, in relationship to people, and in conversation with the world around it. In moments when technology is moving faster than ever, that type of connection and inclusion matters even more. So when you head back to work, ask yourself, whose voice isn't in the room yet? And how are you going to invite them in to help shape what comes next? Because with AI that continues to take from artists, we have an even greater responsibility to create something meaningful. Street art has a rule that if you go over someone else's work, it's a challenge that says what I'm creating is better. So let's not simply make more. Let's create something. Let's become highly intentional, and let's create something that helps amplify overlooked voices, helps make people feel seen, and leaves the world more connected. Thank you. Street art is a way to reclaim space, be heard, and to push back against cultural erasure. So why can't design be too? If you came in today still feeling a little bit shy and unsteady, just remember that just like every piece on the street, every single person here has a story. Be bold, share yours, and maybe take this stage next year. Public arts and arts communities inspire my own work every day, which is why I'm dedicated to bringing arts education to teams and groups and art into spaces through events and activations. Seismic House is an arts education and event design company built on the idea that during times where we feel disconnected, uncertain, and unstable, art and community reconnect us, creating home when all feels lost. If you'd like to learn more about my work, you're looking to give your next event an artistic touch, or you're looking to strengthen connection on your teams, with your audiences, in your life, or you simply want to talk street art, you can visit my website or find me on Instagram or LinkedIn. I love learning about creative projects. If you're visiting, I love giving San Francisco recommendations, and I love helping people share their stories. I look forward to hearing yours, so come find me on the floor. These are my citations. For more detailed citations, please reach out via Instagram or LinkedIn. I just want to say a big thank you to every artist included in this presentation and every artist, advocate, and arts educator who keeps San Francisco strong and inspired. Thank you.